Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. Well, it's kind of approaching late winter. It's February 7th, and I'm going to do some late winter pruning. This is a Macrophylla Hydrangea, or a big leaf hydrangea. And when I say pruning on this, I'm saying that very lightly, as I have said in other videos. I'm not going to prune on it, because if I were to actually prune it and cut it way back, I would cut my blooms off for this year. The Macrophylla Hydrangea starts setting their blooms for the following year in September, October, right around in that time. So you don't want to actually prune it, you just want to deadhead it. So what I'm doing is just basically cutting off the old blooms, as you can see, and I will get in here with a few shots and you can see the new buds starting to come on. Now they're a little bit blackish, they're a little bit dark, because we have had a super harsh winter this year here in the Blue Ridge. As a matter of fact, yesterday we woke up to Ice Storm Freya. And so Ice Storm Freya caused us to lose power. We still don't have electricity, and it just snapped off power poles everywhere. It was amazing. It was beautifully dangerous. It's very beautiful, but very dangerous storm. Now, you can also go in and you can prune any dead wood on the interior of your Macrophylla. If you see any dead wood, this one is so dense, it's hard to get in, so I probably won't do a lot of messing around on the interior. But the reason why I'm wanting to go ahead and cut off these spent blooms now is because they're calling for another winter storm coming midweek. So I don't want this shrub to get all broken down because of any extra weight. So not that these are real heavy, but the more weight we can take out, the better. So it does not hurt it at all, especially since I'm not going down very far and I'm not cutting off any of my blooms for this year. I like to use bypass pruners when I'm doing my pruning, and bypass pruners just means they bypass each other when they close. I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but they bypass. So bypass pruners are my favorite type of pruners for all pruning. I'm basically going to go ahead and deadhead the rest of this shrub, and then we'll move on to my Lady of Shalott climbing rose, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with that. Another thing I'd like to say about the Macrophyllas is, as I'm showing you here, you're seeing some of these buds are really dark. As I said, they look almost like they have died. I have seen that in the past. Because we had such a harsh winter, I'm saying that's why they are dark like they are, but I've seen that happen before, and I've been a little nervous, a little afraid, like, oh no, all my buds are dead, all my blooms are dead. But really that wasn't the case. I've seen it several times. They just get that dark, they're just sort of hiding from the winter. So I don't feel like there's anything to worry about with this. I feel like we'll have a good bloom cover, as you can see here, and I harvested quite a few blooms for drying, but these were left, and I don't usually deadhead my Macrophyllas until late winter. These are the buds that should be blooming in late spring, right around the end of May usually. Sometimes I have blooms for Mother's Day, just depends. I know you're not seeing too pretty of a view right now. This is sort of the utility area of our house, and I basically have this shrub here for utility use, so that I could take cuttings off of it for fresh arrangements and dried flowers and things like that. Oops, I just cut into a bud here accidentally. That was a boo-boo. But you can cut right above a set of buds. You can deadhead right above a set of buds. Here's a dead branch right in here that I'm going to try to reach down without breaking up the shrub too much. And I just cut that off. So I can cut way down into the shrub for that one, because that's dead. Here's another dead one, and also one that's kind of growing kind of wonky. So I cut that one out. All right, so we got a pretty good deadheading done on this Macrophylla. And I did see quite a few dead branches down in the interior and also down underneath that I cut off. And I see a few more like these down here. You can see all of those down in there are pretty much dead. So I will go in and cut those off. But I'm happy now. I feel a lot better about it not being so heavy for the possible storm coming in a couple of days, snowstorm. So anyway, feel a lot better about it. And this one over here is quite a bit smaller. I will go in and deadhead that one as well. You can see a lot of the blooms have already blown off, which is normal. They do that over the winter sometimes. They just blow off and blow around. So I will go and deadhead the rest of that. And while I was deadheading, the power came back on. So yay for the power company. I was really praying for them because it was a really dangerous storm yesterday in the ice. Limbs were falling everywhere. And so they've worked hard to get everybody's power restored, or at least our power is now restored, and I'm hoping everybody else's gets restored as well. So now we are going to work on the Lady of Shalott climbing rose, and I'll show you what I'm going to be doing with that. I just planted it last year, and it was probably a second or third year shrub when I bought it. It was more established of a shrub, but I don't want to prune it very hard, and we'll talk about that. The sunlight is kind of harsh over where the rose bush is, so hopefully it won't be too harsh for you to see it. And then we're going to prune one more thing, and that is my Red Twig Dogwood. So I want to assess that and see if we need to do a rejuvenation prune or just go in and prune back some of the dead stalks on it, the dead branches, but we may have to cut it all the way back down to the ground. So we'll take a look at that, but first let's go to the Lady of Shalott. We're here at my Lady of Shalott, David Austin climbing. Actually, it's called a short climbing rose. And what I'm planning on doing, you can see there are some leaves left from last year or last growing season. I'm going to just do what we call head it. I'm going to head it, and I'm going to just sort of cut off the top, and hence the name heading it. And so I'm not going to cut very far down. Normally with a shrub rose, I would prune it back all the way to about 6 inches, just above to where there's a set of buds. But because I read so much about the Lady of Shalott, apparently it just doesn't love a really harsh pruning. So maybe you've harshly pruned your Lady of Shalott in the past, and I may end up doing that in the future like I would a normal rose. But for this year, especially since it's just it'll be the second growing season that I have it, I'm just going to I'm going to cut it right above a set of buds. And you can cut it at an angle. They have said that there's really no proof that that makes a difference, but I always do anyway. Just cut it at an angle so any excess water can just run right off. So if there's a set of buds right here, I'm just going to head that right there. So I'm going to go right here, and I see some buds coming right there. So I'm just sort of heading it off, and you can understand and see what I'm doing, see what that term means from what I'm doing. I'm having to be careful here where I walk because I have bulbs coming up everywhere. So I don't want to crush anything. So I'm seeing right here some buds, so I'm going to cut right above that. And it keeps wanting to attack me here. I'm going to cut this one a little bit shorter. Okay, that's looking really good. I feel really good about the decision to prune it this way this year, just because of what I've read, and I don't want to make it mad at me. So there is the temptation here to want to cut this back about right here, right above this set of buds. I think I may do it, or I could head it and I could train this branch, which I think I will do that. But I did cut back a 9 bark. It was an Autumn Joy or Autumn Jubilee, something 9 bark. Beautiful, but it just got out of control. It was actually right here, and I've since taken it out. it got out of control, so I decided to cut it back, and it really never forgave me. It really just, it ruined it. And because the 9-barks just want to grow. They want to be planted where they can just grow. So it never forgave me, and it never looked right after I pruned it. And I'm trying to train this to the trellis, and this trellis is borderline not tall enough for this rose. This is only supposed to get 6 to 8 feet tall, but I'm thinking she's gonna want to get quite a bit taller than that. But you can keep them size controlled, which I will have to do with her because she won't have enough support here. The way I would train this is just go ahead and tie this off to this trellis, which I will probably just do. I don't want to cut off and make her mad at me and cut off all her blooms. Because that's the whole point of having her. So I'm just trimming, I'm just heading this off. I'm not going to cut it down too low. And I will just tie it up with some plant ties here. All right, so once we get this tied up, and I think I might pull this branch down out of here and then actually tie it up more properly. It's laying on the outside of the trellis. It's gone through the back of the trellis. So let me see if I can get this out without breaking it and breaking off any of the buds. Ah. Okay, we got that. So I can tie that up properly without it growing behind the trellis. That way the trellis won't scratch it up and things like that. I might leave that one for now till I get it tied up. But once I get that tied up, it'll be just fine. And then I can tie this one back and train it back to grow back a little bit. So when I planted her, I think she was, I'll have to look back on the video because we planted her together. I think she was like this tall. So you can see how much she grew and how much we cut off. Over the summer, how much she grew. All right, I'll clean my debris up here, and then we'll go up and we'll take a look at the Red Twig Dogwood. Here we are at the Red Twig Dogwood, and we had severe drought over the summer. So as you can see here with all of this brown, this is all dead. And because of the drought, even though I watered it, I worked really hard trying to keep everything hydrated up here on the hill. There's nothing like rainwater and your water table from underneath the ground really hydrating things. So we have a couple of choices here with this Red Twig Dogwood. This one has been in the ground probably here maybe 6 years, at least 6 years. And I've never done a rejuvenation prune on this Red Twig Dogwood, or it's also called Coppice pruning. That means you're just going to take it all the way back to the ground. So I think because of the amount of dead that we have in here, and due to the fact that I've never done a rejuvenation prune, I think I'm going to go ahead and take it all the way back to the ground. Now your other option would be just to cut, if you don't have as much dead in yours as I do, you could just cut out the dead all the way down just within a few inches and then leave, you can see the red twigs here. These are the healthy twigs. But in this particular shrub, there are not that many of the healthy living twigs here on this one, just because of the drought. So I'm going to take it back. I'm going to coppice prune it. I'm going to take it back all the way to the ground. And if you were to do this every couple of years, it really rejuvenates the shrub. This year, I'm just going to sacrifice this shrub and let it rejuvenate itself. But I will get some, it will grow up from the stump. It will grow up from the root and begin to form new twigs and everything like that. So really it's needed. Rejuvenation prune is needed for this particular shrub, just because it has so much dead in it. So I have my bypass pruners here, my lopping shears, my bigger ones, and I'm going to go ahead and just lop it off right down at the base. Also, if you wanted to size control, you could head it off just like we did the Lady of Shalott Climbing Rose, or you can lop it off like I'm doing if it just gets out of control and too big. This one is just, because of the age and because of the drought, it's just really needing something extra. So I will fertilize this when I fertilize the rest of my shrubs with a slow release fertilizer, and that will give it another boost. Hopefully I can give you an update. And this is hard, you know, when you cut something back this harsh, it is hard on yourself. Not so much on the shrub, because it's really what this shrub wants. And I should have been doing a little better about rejuvenation pruning this, because a red twig dogwood, or all of your shrub dogwoods, really benefit. Also your willows benefit from a kind of a hard pruning every now and then, or every couple of years. And you could use the twigs that are nice and red and still alive for stakes for other plants or little things like that. I use them a lot of times, and of course I use them in my Christmas decorating. You see here, this is completely dead. When it's all brown like that, it's just completely dead. It died. It should not have turned that brown if it was still living. So just definitely needs to be rejuvenated. I guess it's a case of now you see it, now you don't. It's gone, but the root is still there. The trunk of the shrub is all still there. I'll mention again, in case I didn't, if you have quite a few red stems in your red twig dogwood or your yellow twig dogwood, if you have some really healthy stems and you just have a few of the dead stems, then you can just go in and cut the dead stems. You don't need to do the coppice pruning like I did, because you just want to cut out the dead, unless it's time, unless, like I said, you notice your stems being all brown, not as red as they should, not as bright red, not growing as healthily as it should, then it probably would be time for a rejuvenation prune for your twig dogwood. Well, that's all that we're going to be doing today. Time is getting away from me, and I have to restock my refrigerator now that the power is back on. Thank you so much for being with me today, and until next time, friends, happy gardening. Bye-bye.